Starbucks is being sued not by an employee, but by the state of Missouri. The allegation that its diversity programs unlawfully discriminated against applicants and employees based on race and gender. So, by the end of this video, you'll have a clear understanding of why Starbucks is being sued, what Missouri is really challenging, and how this case could impact how companies approach diversity going forward. Hi, I'm Harlow Reed, employment lawyer, HR consultant, and creator of the HR Insider. And on this channel, I do more than share legal opinions. I break down real legal cases to show how the law might apply to your situation. Okay, so back in 2018, Starbucks made national headlines after a white manager in Philadelphia called the police on two black men who were just hanging around waiting for a colleague. Now, that story actually went viral, and Starbucks got a lot of bad press about it, but to their credit, they responded very quickly to the negative press. The CEO, he met with the men and the police commissioner. The company clarified its bathroom policy, which was one of the things that triggered that incident. And they even shut down the store nationwide for a full day of racial bias training. And that moment marked a turning point, not just for Starbucks, but for how many companies began responding to racial justice issues in the workplace. If you haven't seen my video called Is DEI Legal? I definitely recommend checking it out, because in that video, I talk about how companies like Starbucks started making bold commitments publicly in response to events that exposed really deep racial inequities. But now some of those same companies are under fire, not necessarily for what they stood for, but for how quickly they moved to take specific actions that, according to some, may have crossed legal lines. Okay, let's talk about it. The content shared on this channel is for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional legal advice. Always consult with a qualified attorney or HR professional for specific guidance tailored to your needs. And hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. So back in 2020, after the murder of George Floyd, Starbucks, like so many other companies, they made a lot of public commitments to advancing racial and social equity. Part of the commitment made by Starbucks included a series of DEI initiatives. First, they set a goal of having 30% of their corporate employees and 40% of their retail employees come from the BIPOC population, which is short for Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So basically, Starbucks was looking to increase representation of underrepresented racial and ethnic groups. They also tied executive pay to those diversity goals. And that means bonuses for top leaders were partially based on how well the company improved representation in underrepresented areas. It was a really bold move, and one that caught attention, especially in legal circles. Starbucks also committed to creating mentorship programs and leadership programs specifically designed to support employees from historically marginalized groups. So the idea was to give these employees who were underrepresented greater access to advancement opportunities. But now, and it's been 4 years since that went into effect, those very efforts are at the center of the lawsuit we are talking about today. The legal pushback that they are now facing raises a question that a lot of companies are going to have to answer for, which is, when does a diversity program stop being inclusive and start becoming reverse discrimination? In February 2025, Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey filed a federal lawsuit against Starbucks, claiming the company's DEI practices crossed the line into unlawful discrimination. According to the Attorney General, Starbucks violated federal and state civil rights laws, including Title VII and the Missouri Human Rights Act, by using racial and gender quotas in hiring and promotion decisions. The Attorney General also said that Starbucks prioritized training and leadership roles to employees based on race, gender, or sexual orientation. And Starbucks implemented a board diversity goal that allegedly excluded candidates based on their identity. And on that last point, Starbucks had a target for at least 30% of its board to be composed of women and BIPOC members. Remember, Black, Indigenous, and people of color. On paper, that looks like an effort to bring more perspectives into leadership, and it's a step many large companies have taken in recent years. But the lawsuit argues that by tying board composition to race and gender, Starbucks may have overlooked or excluded other qualified candidates. Under federal law, even board appointments must be made without regard to race or gender or other protected characteristics, no matter how well intentioned the goal may be. The state also claims that these practices harmed Missouri consumers by prioritizing diversity over merit, and that includes tying executive compensation to racial and gender representation goals. And the company's mentor and leadership programs, which were designed to support underrepresented employees, are under scrutiny. The state claims that they may have unfairly excluded others, such as white or male employees, from equal access. Whether or not these claims hold up in court, it's still an open question, but it's one that has major implications for how companies design their DEI programs going forward, and it's a big part of what makes this case so important to watch. When I review cases on this channel, I share insight about both the plaintiff and the defendant's perspective. So I want to pause for just a moment to talk about the state of Missouri as the plaintiff in this case, because I do think it's important to understand the context of the state that's bringing this lawsuit. Missouri has a complicated and painful racial history. Missouri played a central role in the infamous Dred Scott case. That was a decision issued by the U.S. Supreme Court, and it has been lauded as one of the most infamous cases in American history because the court ruled that Dred Scott, an enslaved man who had lived in free territory, could not sue for his freedom in federal court. That meant that Black Americans, whether free or enslaved, were not considered U.S. citizens under the Constitution, and it also ruled that Congress lacked the authority to prohibit slavery in territories, effectively nullifying the Missouri Compromise. And this decision, which came out of St. Louis, Missouri, intensified tensions leading up to the Civil War. It's widely viewed as one of the worst Supreme Court rulings in U.S. history. You fast forward to today, Missouri remains deeply divided along racial and political lines. You may remember the 2014 police killing of Michael Brown in Ferguson, which was a St. Louis suburb. That event sparked national protest and helped ignite the Black Lives Matter movement. So, when we look at this lawsuit, Missouri suing Starbucks for allegedly going too far in promoting racial equality, it's not happening in a vacuum. It's coming from a state with a long, intense history around race, identity, and power. And that context matters. So, how did Starbucks respond? Well, they say Missouri got it all wrong, basically. Starbucks insists that its diversity programs are legal, they're based on merit, and that they're open to everyone. They say their DEI goals are voluntary, not strict quotas, and they argue that no one is being excluded from opportunities. They've also questioned whether Missouri even has the legal right or standing to bring this lawsuit in the first place. Starbucks has filed a motion asking the court to dismiss the case entirely, which is a pretty common move that companies make when they're sued for discrimination claims. What's more interesting is that the company's employee union stepped in to show support. They filed what's called an amicus brief, and that's basically a legal letter from someone who's not directly involved in the case, but wants to share their perspective with the court. In their brief, the union argued that under certain civil rights laws, employers are actually allowed to use limited race or gender conscious programs to address past discrimination. So, in their view, Starbucks may not be violating the law, it might be complying with it. Whether the judge agrees is still up in the air. But this response sets up an important legal question. Can a company take action to fix systemic inequality but without violating discrimination laws? So, what is this case really about? At its core, this case is about a growing tension, guys. Can companies pursue equity without being accused of discrimination. Missouri's lawsuit, it isn't happening in isolation. It's a part of a broader legal and political push challenging DEI programs. And if you saw my video on Ames v. Ohio called Is DEI Still Legal? You'll remember that case involved a white female employee who sued over a DEI driven hiring decision. The core issue there was similar. When do efforts to promote diversity become a form of reverse discrimination? Missouri v. Starbucks could become a legal test for just how far companies can go with these programs before they risk crossing a legal line. And Missouri's Attorney General isn't just focused on Starbucks. He is also focusing on Fortune 500 companies that are tying executive compensation to environmental and social performance metrics, which is a trend that has gained a lot of momentum with larger corporations. What does this mean for employees? Well, with or without DEI, companies still can't discriminate. Employees have rights, and if you're being passed over or treated unfairly because of your gender, because of your race, or even your background, you have every right to speak up. Don't assume that just because it's hiding or happening under the banner of equity, that it's legal. And for employers, DEI, it's not a legal shield. Employers need to ask hard questions, like if everyone on the team looks the same, does that mean no other qualified candidates applied? Why not? Diversity efforts need to be about removing barriers, not creating new ones, and all hiring decisions still need to be grounded in fairness, merit, and the law. This isn't the first challenge to DEI, and it won't be the last, but I'll be watching this case closely. And if you want to understand how these legal arguments play out, subscribe to the channel to see more videos that help you understand your rights at work. I'll see you in the next video.